Welcome back. Now, the ANC's National Executive Committee is considering stabilising coalitions at local government level. This with the Government of National Unity model across the country. But there has been scepticism on whether parties would be keen to take over some municipalities because of the magnitude of the problems they face. Financial Mail's editor-at-large, Natasha Marrian, joins us now to look further into this intervention and how the task team will be looking to fast-track rebuilding municipalities. Natasha, an absolute pleasure. Good afternoon.
Hi, no, thanks for having me.
Wonderful, Tash. Maybe before we get into the prospect of the GNU at local government levels, let's talk about just taking stock of the GNU to date. It has been very interesting, lots of interesting presses from members of the GNU, a more silent ANC than I thought, we would see there. How are you, looking at the progress so far and the success to date?
So now, it looks very much like it's early days for me. You see a lot of noise around it. Helen Zille coming out and saying it's not a GNU, it's a coalition. You have a lot of noise around actually defining what this is. But irrespective of what it is, what South Africa has at the moment is not one sole political party governing with an outright majority. That's the fact. So whether you want to call it a coalition or a GNU, that's where we're at. The individual ministers seem to be making quite, there's a lot of noise around individual ministers on social media, but we must remember that social media is a very small audience in South Africa, and the real impact is going to be seen in a couple of months' time when they've actually had time to settle in, and actually, we can actually start looking at the work that they've done. Because up to now, basically what we're seeing is a carry through from the last administration. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a bit early. I think it's early days to assess the GNU. But I do think that in the months ahead, we will be able to start seeing whether these opposition party ministers are in fact making a difference in the pace and the implementation style of the erstwhile ANC government.
And with that said, of course, now the conversation moves to the possibility of the GNU being reflected at a local government level. Speaking about municipalities, but I just want to go one up there. At provincial level, maybe even looking at Gauteng. That hasn't quite worked out the way, we had all anticipated or thought that it would there. And so I'm just wondering, how that would even work, Natasha.
Well, what we have in Gauteng is essentially a minority government. So the government that was formed, the coalition that was formed, doesn't have the majority to pass budgets, to make any solid decisions in the provincial legislature. So I think it's remiss to call that a government of national unity. It's a minority government of provincial unity. Let's call it that. Sure. But what we see happening is that the relationship between the Gauteng ANC and the EFF is seemingly going to push that minority government over the line on crucial decisions. Whether that's going to last is difficult to say, because the ANC at national level is not very comfortable about the way this provincial government has been set up. So we don't know whether that will last. At the moment, there's very little noise about, whether there's a plan to renegotiate the deal in Gauteng. But we do know from the DA side that they are dead set against going into government with the ANC under the conditions that they had during the negotiations, because the DA in Gauteng did a lot better than it did nationally in terms of the share of the vote compared to that of the ANC. So their demands are a lot higher. But it seems that the ANC doesn't have the appetite to include the DA either, because a week after the provincial government of provincial unity was put together, and Panyaza Lesufi, the premier, announced that government, in a briefing in which he said he's still open to talking to the DA. The DA, in fact, wrote to him and said, okay, you said you're still open to talking. Shall we talk? And that was a week after that announcement was made. And to this day, they've not heard back from him. So there's no appetite on both sides to kind of finalize that deal.
And with the complexities at a provincial level, I mean, that's a really complex situation. It's complex at national level. It's a little bit more complex at provincial level. At local government level, that's where we are. That's the conversation we're having now, Natasha. Could this model really exist at local government level? Could it maybe only exist at metro level? And could it lead to the economic transformation we desperately need in our metros?
It could work if so. Writing the story was somewhat difficult because the ANC is really trying to stabilize those coalitions. But the difficulty with local government is that there isn't the same sort of political parties support across the board. So you wouldn't have the DA at the same level in the city of Joburg and in Maluti Upper Fong in the Free State, for instance. So that's the complexity about local government, which is why when I spoke to the ANC's coalition head, a political education head, David Makura, he said, you would need a program of action that the parties in that particular council would have to rally around. You couldn't have sort of a standard agreement with the DA, the IFP, like it has nationally, and that filters down across, because the different councils have different political party power plays. So it's going to be very complex, but they're committing to complete the process by the end of August. So let's see whether that actually comes to fruition. We're seeing the developments in Joburg. That's part of this process. We're likely to see the ANC's Dada Moreira as the mayor by the end of the week. We saw Mr. Gwamanda, the former executive mayor from Al-Jamar, resign, on Tuesday. So that is playing out in Johannesburg. In Ekurhuleni, we're likely to see a similar. We already saw the replacement of an AIC mayor in Ekurhuleni with an ANC mayor. And we're likely to see more shifts in Ekurhuleni in the coming months.
Well, Tasha, we'll be in touch at the end of August to see how this plays itself out. Thank you for your time. Always a pleasure talking to you. That was Natasha Marrian, editor-at-large for the Financial Mail.